Pittsburgh veterans report for training camp on July 25th at St. Vincent College in Latrobe. And a key question that must be echoing around the Steelers base is whether or not the window is starting to close on another Super Bowl season. We'll discuss that question and more, including roster analysis, as we preview training camp for the Pittsburgh Steelers by going one-on-one with Jeff Hartman, Pittsburgh Steelers football analyst and the editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com on the OFN Meeting Room with Greg DePalma. It's Friday, June 29th, 2018. I'm Greg DePalma, and thanks for tuning in to the OFN Meeting Room as we preview NFL training camps once again for the 2018 season. And today it's with BehindTheSteelCurtain.com's Jeff Hartman. Jeff, thanks for helping us talk Pittsburgh Steelers football again today.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
All right, Jeff. So a lot going on in the offseason. I guess you're kind of used to this, Le'Veon Bell, even Antonio Brown, Ben Roethlisberger. Anything at all that has happened from what we've heard outside of Pittsburgh, of course, national news with the three, especially with Bell and Big Ben. Anything at all that's different? Should we take any of this as far as, wow, you know what, that's different this time. I think the Steelers' window is really starting to close. I'm not so sure how much Ben Roethlisberger has or Le'Veon Bell has around here. Or do you just think this is just more talk?
I think it's a little bit of both. Personally, the window is closing because Ben Roethlisberger is getting older. You look at Le'Veon Bell, only guaranteed to be here for this year. They might get a deal done by July 16th at the deadline, but we don't know if that'll happen or not. And if it doesn't, there's a good chance, well, actually, a very good chance that he's going to be gone in free agency. And so what does the running back situation look like? Antonio Brown's in the prime of his career, but at the same time, how long is he going to be able to continue to put up those type of numbers? And especially, what will he be able to do if Roethlisberger, say, decides to retire? Not to mention that the defense is still very young and has not really lived up to Pittsburgh standards. I would say that the window is closing, but this past draft class was very forward-thinking, future-based draft. You look at Mason Rudolph, James Washington. They're kind of stocking the shelves for life after some of these players, and so
sure.
Although the window might be closing technically, if it is closing, I don't think it will be closed long if some of these players pan out.
How are the fans taking to Ben? Because, again, outside it just seems like there's so much. I mean, people are confused by how he's been acting regarding the situation. How have the fans been reacting to what they've heard out of him?
They were kind of split. When he made the comments on his radio show on 93.7 The Fan in Pittsburgh, immediately after the draft, I shouldn't say immediately after, but like the weeks following, there was half of the fan base was saying, man, this guy must, Roethlisberger's, it's a little much, isn't it? To say some of these things about a rookie. I mean, it came off as being Roethlisberger, maybe for the first time ever since being drafted in 2004, threatened a little bit for his job. And so, but then there was another half that said, look, it's a guy that's an aging veteran. He's a two-time Super Bowl champion. No one wants to be forced out of their position, and maybe that's what he felt at the same time. So it was kind of split, but people still realize, although I do think the vast majority of the fan base, as of this time, Mason Rudolph has not thrown a pass in the National Football League season. But the vast majority like Mason Rudolph, but they also realize Roethlisberger is the key to winning another Super Bowl.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with having Mason Rudolph sit on the bench for a couple of years, waiting his turn and learning the offense and behind Ben. So that's the best of both worlds. There's a lot of fan bases that would love to have that problem. What about Bell? Gut feeling on how much longer this is going to go on?
Nothing's going to happen. I would put a lot of money down that there won't be anything conclusive until July 15th or 16th, which is the deadline. That just seems to be when the two sides will actually get a deal done. The reports were the Steelers were waiting to sign all of their draft picks. They haven't signed Terrell Edmunds yet. He's the only draft pick that has yet to sign his rookie deal. That would, they can negotiate signing bonus, the duration of the terminology in the fourth year, I should say, of their first contract, and then they would know how much money they can actually throw at Bell. So I don't think that's there's going to be any major headway. Bell made some comments in his interview with the NFL Network after the NFL Top 100 was finalized and released. And you know what? He was very confident. I was shocked, actually, to hear some of the things that he said. And, maybe there is a glimmer of hope. If there is any hope, I would say it is just that, a glimmer. The Steelers just can't pay him what he thinks he deserves.
Yeah.
And because of that, it's probably not going to end well.
All right, so you don't think, chances are, your gut tells you he's not going to be around much longer.
I would say 90% to 10% chance that he is only here for 2018, and then he is playing in another uniform in 2019.
All right, let's talk about the offense first. We'll stick with the offense by talking about the offensive coordinator switch. Randy Fichtner takes over. He's been around for a long time here in Pittsburgh, quarterback job, coaching the quarterbacks for the last 8 years, so he replaces Todd Haley. What kind of a move was that, and how do you see that helping Pittsburgh going forward?
Well, I'll say this, that Randy Fichtner is a guy that's not going to come in and just say we're just completely scrapping everything that we had done. The Steelers' offense was still prolific under Haley. I think Fichtner is going to do a couple things. He's going to put his own spin on it, and he's going to talk to the players, and he's going to give Ben Roethlisberger a lot of input. He's going to talk to players like Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown, the offensive line. He'll probably lean on Mike Munchak a lot as the offensive line coach. And I think he's going to want to put together a playbook that's not a this is what we're going to do playbook. It's a this is what we do best playbook. You have to go back to Memphis. Memphis University in 2002, believe it or not, D'Angelo Williams was a running back there at the time. The last time he called plays.
Okay.
So it's still for him. And he has a great relationship with Roethlisberger. And I would expect the offense to look pretty much the same. I think situationally is where you'll see the big difference. Red zone, third down, 2-minute drill type stuff, maybe running more up-tempo, more no-huddle. But in terms of the play calling, I don't see it being that big of a deal.
Okay. And by the way, you pronounce his name Fichtner?
Yes, that is the correct pronunciation.
You see, that's what happens when you're a quarterback coach for many years. People don't know how to pronounce your name correctly, but we'll get it real soon. We will all get it real soon when you're the new coordinator at Pittsburgh. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's regarding the quarterbacks then, not named Roethlisberger or even Mason Rudolph, because he's hopefully the future. Is it a Dobbs versus Landry Jones battle to see who holds on to that third spot, or there's a possibility they're keeping 4 quarterbacks?
There is a possibility that they keep 4 quarterbacks. It hasn't happened since, I think, 94 when Cowher was the coach, but at the same time, and that was when they had Cordell Stewart on the roster. It might have been 95, actually, but they haven't done it a lot. Mike Tomlin's never done it. And there are some people that think that Mason Rudolph has a legitimate chance of being the number 2 this year.
Okay.
Now, Randy Fichtner loves Landry Jones. He's been around him. He knows him. He trusts him, and that's a big thing in the National Football League. In case your starter goes down, you have to have some trust in your backup. I really don't know who the competition is between. I know that Mason Rudolph is not going to get cut, barring injury or he quits the game. So you would think then it's Dobbs versus Landry Jones. I mean, if the other two are playing better, I view it this way, and this is just my own perspective. I don't think this is how it's going to play out necessarily, but for me, I look at it and say, you know what Landry Jones can do. And if Ben Roethlisberger were to be injured for a long period of time, whether it's injury that's done for the year or whether he's lost for half a season, is Landry Jones going to be able to carry the weight and get you to the Super Bowl? I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Agreed.
For me, I would say, why not roll with the young guys?
Yep.
Because you'll be able to save some salary cap space, and at the same time, you're going to get a glimpse of what you have behind Roethlisberger. And so that's just my own personal thinking. I don't think the Steelers are thinking that way. I think the Dobbs is most likely going to be released. Maybe he passes, clears waivers, and can be on the practice squad. I doubt that happens with the level of quarterback play in the National Football League.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, we'll see what happens. That's one of the more intriguing camp battles for me, and it's actually going to make the preseason slightly tolerable because it'll give you something to pay attention to.
Yeah. So that tells you that Dobbs just has not developed yet at all to give the Steelers, you think, enough faith that he could stick around here as a viable option down the road.
He's just so rough around the edges.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, even last year, he's inaccurate throwing the football down the field. He's extremely athletic. He showed off that athleticism several times last season in the preseason where he's scrambling, making plays with his legs. But when it comes to conventional quarterback play, there's a lot that's left to be desired. And that's kind of where Mason Rudolph excels. He's more of a pocket passer. He's not someone that's going to rely on things breaking down to make a play. And then again, like I said, Landry Jones, I mean, what else is he going to prove? This guy's played more preseason snaps, I think, than anyone in NFL history during his career. What you see is what you get with Landry Jones. So the Steelers' backup quarterback situation is definitely going to be a major talking point coming into training camp.
Yeah, I don't think there's look to me. I've seen these kids play in college, and Mason Rudolph is a much more reliable prospect than Joshua Dobbs. There's just it's not even close as far as I'm concerned. Even though both guys were drafted pretty similarly, with Mason Rudolph as a third-round pick and Dobbs as a fourth-round pick, but Rudolph could easily have been a late first-round pick. So I don't really judge it by that. All right, let's go to running back. And, of course, we talked about Bell. How's Connor coming along as far as being able to rely on him as you know, a healthy number 2 option for Bell? He's clearly the future, the only future guy on this squad, right? Except unless, you know, Jarvion Franklin surprises in camp. And I like Franklin, you know, but Connor's the future at this point, right?
He is. I feel like when I look at the way the Steelers drafted the last 2 seasons, they've been preparing for Bell to leave.
Okay.
You have James Conner, who is that downhill runner. He runs the football extremely hard. All reports out of camp and off-season workouts, mini camp, OTAs, was that Conner has dropped some weight, just like Le'Veon Bell had to after his rookie year.
Okay.
He looks faster, more durable, and he looks like he belongs. Is like the common theme that you're seeing from or hearing from those that are actually at practices. And don't forget Jalen Samuels, the draft pick that they got from North State this year. He's kind of a jack of all trades when it comes to the running back position. He would be the Le'Veon Bell type that can flex out and be a receiver, and can play tight end on those fullbacks, can run the football. You think that if Bell were to leave, that Samuel / Connor / maybe Franklin, maybe another draft pick, or maybe someone like Stephen Ridley or Fitzgerald Toussaint, who are also on the roster, they could probably do a running back by committee and survive that way. They might not thrive, but they could possibly survive that way. And so I think the Steelers have been putting together, like I said, the last few years, they've been kind of looking down the road saying, look, if we don't keep Le'Veon Bell, we have to be prepared. And I think that they're getting there. I don't think they're there yet, but they would have another year in the draft to do so. I think that if Bell were to leave, I like Jalen Samuels. The more tape I watch from North State, my goodness.
That's right.
He's a Swiss Army knife, and he can do it all. So it would give them some really interesting options. And I'm anxious to see what James Conner can do with a year under his belt, knowing what to expect in the National Football League, and seeing if he lives up to some of this hype that's been building over the offseason.
Okay, does that mean that Nix might not make the team?
No, I think he just signed a new contract.
Okay.
And I think Conner likes the fullback, and Roosevelt Nix doesn't just play fullback. He's a great special teams guy as well.
Got it.
I see him making the team as well. So I think that there's a good chance, if Jalen Samuels plays well, James Conner, Le'Veon Bell, that might be your stable of backs, and Fitzgerald Toussaint and Stephen Ridley both might be cut. Yeah,
and that's especially true if Franklin winds up showing that he belongs. Really surprised. I shouldn't say not surprised that he didn't get drafted. It happens, and I know he wasn't he didn't have the fastest time until he did lose a little weight and got faster. But very productive, as we know. And how many times? I mean, you know. I mean, how many times do we get these MAC players that actually overachieve? So definitely keep an eye on Franklin for sure. It should be interesting following his development. Okay, talk about the tight ends. Jesse James is still there, so it's the same group: James, McDonald. McDonald was somebody that was highly sought out, out of college, and Niners gave him chance after chance, and then the Pittsburgh Steelers finally picked him up last year. It looked to me that as time started to go on and he started getting more reps, that he actually started to look pretty good, Vance McDonald. Is that? Do you think that's the case? I mean, is it possible that maybe the change of organizations and going to Ben Roethlisberger is going to be a big help to him?
I think so. People forget, fans are easy to forget this, that he was signed the week before week 1 last year.
Yeah.
I mean, think about that. I mean, think about the logistics of that situation for Vance McDonald. So he had prepared all offseason with 49ers with whatever warm body they were throwing out there until Jimmy Garoppolo got there, which he never saw him. And so then he gets traded to Pittsburgh, so he's going to a whole new offense, a whole new city, whole new scheme, learning all the new terminology. And he spoke in the offseason to the Steelers' official website and spoke about how difficult it was in moving his family, trying to learn a new system, getting comfortable with the quarterback. And he was also battling injuries, had an ankle, shoulder injury, kept him out of the lineup for several weeks. If he's healthy, he's developing a really good relationship with Ben Roethlisberger. And you kind of saw that in the playoff loss to the Jaguars, where he had his best statistical game, I think maybe of his career, at least of the season. And I think that this guy is as close to Heath Miller as fans are going to want. He can block well. He can run routes. His hands are not the best, not as sure-handed as Heath Miller, but he's also more athletic than Heath Miller. Get him the ball in space, and he can actually get some yards after the catch. I think this is, if there's one player that I'm saying could be a sleep pick for fantasy or for, someone that you're not expecting to shine,
yep,
I would pick on offense Vance McDonald, because I think the Steelers, they've always loved the tight end. It's always been Ben Roethlisberger's safety blanket when Heath Miller was there. Vance McDonald could be that guy this year.
Yeah, I agree. He holds on to that football when Ben throws it to him, and that's going to go a long way, stretching the defense and providing another weapon in the passing game for the Steelers. That would be huge. Okay, talk about wide receivers. We know how great Antonio Brown is. Juju Smith had a huge year. Made it a lot easier with the whole Martavis Bryant situation, so he's gone, and in comes James Washington, Mason Rudolph's teammate, which is a nice deal there. But those are the top three, right? Washington's gonna. I mean, he's got the talent. He's gonna contribute right away, isn't he?
Yeah. Everything you hear about James Washington is that he could be ready by week 1 in terms of the stage isn't too big. What he does well is stretch the field. He's not fast in a track sense. A lot of people look at his 40 time. It was, I think at his pro day he ran a 4.4, but at the combine it was closer to a 4.5. And for a receiver, that's just not very good.
Mm-hmm.
And but he stretches the field, and he can really run underneath the football well. Sounds really stupid, but when you watch him play, when the ball's in the air, he can accelerate and get underneath the ball. He high points the ball very well.
Yep.
He does a lot that Martavis Bryant didn't do well. And that's really who he's replacing, is Martavis Bryant and his spot, and that taking the top off the defense. And so what Washington brings to the team is another player that can get vertical, can make big plays, and could also be a red zone threat for the Steelers. I'm not sure he's going to start week 1. The Steelers offensively typically don't throw rookies out there right away. They didn't with Juju Smith-Schuster last year. Took them a few weeks before they kind of gave them a little bit of the reins and let them go out there and show what they could do. It'll be interesting to see. Washington is a hard worker. He grew up on a farm, and that sounds silly to reference, but at the same time, there's a work ethic there.
Oh, yeah.
And, he's a hard worker, and that's everything you hear from college.
Yes.
So I'm excited to see what he can bring to the receiving corps.
Yeah, and because of his experience, 4-year starter, and also with his ability as already a very polished route runner, should make it easier for him to transition And is it just the usual suspects after that? Darius Hayward-Bay, Justin Hunter, and those guys will probably try to battle to make the 4th and 5th spots?
Yeah, I mean, Justin Hunter is someone that's really frustrating because everything you hear about him, already you heard it. And you heard it last year at training camp when Martavis Bryant was waiting to be fully reinstated. Oh, my gosh, Justin Hunter was making all these plays.
Yep.
Dazzling catches. And already in OTAs and minicamp, it's the same thing. Boy, Hunter's catching everything his way, and yet it never really translates into games that count. And that, for him, that includes the preseason. And he's kind of a journeyman receiver. You know, he spent time with Tennessee and with Buffalo. I think that he could be another receiver for the Steelers that can, you know, they want guys that can take the top off. They want defenses to have to throw a safety on that side. That's what Martavis Bryant did, and that freed up Antonio Brown a lot. And if you're going to double both guys, well, then whoever's in the slot, in which case last year was Juju Smith-Schuster, they're going to have to just be one-on-one, a one-on-one matchup, in which he did, almost had 1,000 yards receiving as a rookie. So I think that Justin Hunter, Darius Hayward-Bay can still run, but you know they have their 3 right now with Brown, Washington, and Smith-Schuster. It's just a matter of who's going to be 4 and or 5.
All right, let's go to the offensive line, and the only player not there is Hubbard. He's gone. Depth looks like it may be an issue, but the starting 5 looks solid if they're healthy, and then they add in the rookie from Western Michigan, Chuck Woo-Moo Okafor. I hope I got that right. Anyway, he's a raw prospect, though. But is that what it is? Is as long as that unit's healthy, they're fine, but depth might be a question?
Depth is certainly a question, especially at tackle. You know, Hubbard was the swing tackle. He was kind of the jack of all trades for the line. I mean, Hubbard played center in Week 17 last year when they rested Marquise Pouncey and B.J. Finney, their backup interior lineman, got hurt. And so Hubbard had to take snaps at center. I mean, he did everything for him. So when he leaves in free agency, which they knew was going to happen because he played so well when Marcus Gilbert was hurt and or suspended last year, they were hoping that Gerald Hawkins, a former, I think, a 4th-round pick from LSU, was going to step in and be that swing tackle who could bounce left or right, wherever he would be needed, as well as the extra tight end and jumbo packages. Well, he tore his quadriceps during OTAs. He is on injured reserve. Years probably done. And so now Chucks, as they call him, the Okafor from Western Michigan, is being thrust into that role. He's in a competition with Matt Filer, who was with the team last year. But, you know, they drafted this kid in the 3rd round for a reason. And if Pittsburgh Steelers fans know something, it's don't question Mike Munchak. Mike Munchak likes the kid on the offensive line, and he's made a world of difference for the Steelers along the offensive line. They think that he can develop him into that swing tackle and that extra guy that comes onto the field when they want to run the football. It's not good. I mean, anytime you have to rely on a rookie as your top backup tackle is not good. But at the same time, if their front 5, which I would put with the best in the league, they can stay healthy. I think they'll be fine. But just the tackle depth, their interior depth, I actually like. It's their tackle depth that it's just not that solid. I'm not sure if they might look to bring someone in. If there's someone that gets cut from another team, that's probably going to be an option if they're going to keep their eye on that. But as of right now, it's just the rookie, and we'll see what happens. Let's hope that doesn't have to play a factor in this season.
Yeah, absolutely. So that is definitely a spot on offense to keep an eye on, staying healthy. Let's go to defense, and that defensive line, just like the offensive line, the strength of the team. Hargrave has developed into a top nose tackle. You got Hayward, you got Tuitt, even Tyson Alululu did a good job, as a backup rotation lineman. So this is it's taken a few years, but this is as good as a unit as the Steelers have had up front in a while.
Yeah, the only thing that the fan base really wants, and I get it, but schematically it doesn't fit, is they want that Casey Hansen type nose tackle, and that's not Javon Hargrave. Javon Hargrave is smaller. He's built lower to the ground. I compare him more to Geno Atkins than I do anyone else from the Bengals. Really good with his hands. He's almost better as a pass rusher than he is a run stopper. And that was where Daniel McCullers was supposed to step in, who came from Tennessee. They nicknamed the Shade Tree because he's a giant of a man. But he just never panned out, and they signed him to a one-year deal. See if he can maybe get his act together. But they also drafted Joshua Frazier in the 7th round from Alabama, maybe thinking he could possibly transition into a nose tackle spot. But the fact of the matter is the Steelers, and everyone thinks about the Steelers and their vaunted 3-4 defense, they might run the 3-4 20% of the time out of in any football game.
Okay.
It's a package team now. Very rarely do you see the standard 3 down linemen. You'll see guys like Cam Hayward out wide, almost looking like a linebacker. They move them all over the place. And like I said, it's very rare. Typically in short yardage or goal line is when you see their standard 3-4 defense out there. And so everyone wants that Casey Hampton type that's going to require 2 blockers every single time. But at the same time, I understand why they don't have that, because they don't use it that often. That would almost feel like a wasted roster spot. So, yeah, I do like their defensive front. They proved last year they can get after the quarterback. If there's one player that I really want to see step up his game, it's Stephon Tuitt. He tore his biceps tendon on the first defensive snap last year in week 1 against Cleveland, and he played through it. But you could definitely tell he wasn't the same player that everyone expected.
Mm-hmm.
If Stephon Tuitt if he could be the force that everyone knows he can be, he and Hayward healthy on the same defensive front, that's going to be a nightmare for offensive lines to try to block.
Oh, yeah.
And it's going to open up for the outside linebackers. So it's very key to Tuitt, in my opinion, that Tuitt steps up his game in 2018.
All right. And by the way, is Greg Gilmore somebody to watch, the nose tackle from LSU, the rookie free agent?
Yeah, maybe. But again, I think it comes down to what the defense wants to do in general. And
okay.
Do they want to have a pure nose tackle outside of Hargrave on their roster? I don't think they want to have more than one, and Hargrave is that guy.
Got it. Let's go to the linebackers. And, of course, we all know about Ryan Shazier no longer around. So you look at this unit, they bring in Bostic, and but pretty much everybody is the same with the exception of adding a couple of rookie free agents. So what do you think about the way this unit is shaping up? Of course, T.J. Watt had a huge year, a lot of excitement about him. Bud Dupree looks like, again, whether or not he's ever going to live up to that first-round grade. Not sure that's going to happen. So you tell me, what's different? What's the major difference? Let's take Shazier out of the equation, of course, because that's obvious. What else is different in a positive way about what Pittsburgh's going to line up with this year?
Well, the biggest difference is that they have already started experimenting with flipping Watt and Dupree on the side that they predominantly rush from. So last year, Dupree was on the left side, Watt was on the right. And so far in the offseason, they have decided to switch those two, and that would mean that Dupree would be going against the left tackle, and obviously vice versa for Watt on the other side. That would be the biggest change, and the reason why, according to Joey Porter, the outside linebacker coach, is that they felt as a coaching staff that Dupree was beating his man with a tight end or a tackle, and the quarterback, most of them are right-handed, they were able to see him coming and either get rid of the football or to elude the tackle.
Okay.
And so they wanted to bring him from the blind side. I don't know if that's necessarily going to work. Typically, left tackles are the better of the two on the offensive line, but he's going to be going up against better competition. But the outside linebackers, for me, because they asked them to drop into coverage so much, aren't really the main factors anymore. It's going to be really interesting to see how John Bostic handles replacing, I shouldn't say replacing, but taking the role of Ryan Shazier in that defense, because Shazier is so much more than the athletic freak that could run sideline to sideline and, you know, the player that would shoot the gap and get yards, tackles for losses. He was the communicator. He was the guy that was getting everyone lined up. He was the hub, so to speak, of the defense, where he was getting the defensive line set as well as the secondary. Someone has to be able to do that. And it's been an issue when Shazier's been out of the lineup. And now they have it all offseason. Last year was a nightmare trying to fill those shoes midseason. I don't think anyone thought that the Steelers played their cards poorly, because that's just a situation where you can't – I don't think you can ever do that correctly. you have an all-pro basically that's gone, and you're trying to fill those gaps. It's just almost impossible. So Sean Spence isn't back. They get John Bostic, who is a downhill player. He's athletic, more so than he's not Ryan Shazier. But people forget too, Ryan Shaziers don't grow on trees. You typically don't find side linebackers that can run sub 4.4 and be as freakish athletic. He's just such an athlete. Those don't happen all the time. So Vince Williams, I like Vince Williams. A lot of fans have gone sour on him. I don't think he almost had double-digit sacks last year. He's a good run stopper. He's vulnerable in coverage. The Steelers are going to be creative with how they handle that inside linebacker role. Don't be surprised if you see Terrell Edmonds, the top draft pick this year, playing some inside linebacker in some packages. He's fast enough. He's a tackler. He can play in the box. He's not going to shy away from contact, and he can also cover. So they were, again, the Steelers are not a stupid organization. Fans might think that they are, but the decision to draft Terrell Edmonds as a safety, that had lingering effects on the inside linebackers as well as the safety group. I think the Steelers know what they're doing. It's just a matter of time that they put it on the field.
Yeah, they might have. Who knows? Again, you never know. That maybe they reached a little bit, but they had to target him for a specific reason, and that's all that matters. By the way, the other rookies, you got Adani from Toledo, who was an edge 3-4 rusher at Toledo. So I don't know how he's been playing so far. And Matthew Thomas might be interesting as well. I mean, that was a 5-star high school prospect. Dealt with shoulder injuries, some red flags, and so forth, which is the reason he wasn't drafted, but a very good prospect. So I think those are a couple of interesting guys to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I definitely like Thomas. I actually predicted him to make the roster. If he gets his head on straight and he really works hard, those were the biggest knocks on him, is that he was a superstar coming out of high school but never lived up to hype because his work ethic was a problem, off-field issues were a problem. If he can get out of that mindset, buy into the system, I think he is athletic enough that he could be at least a special teams player his rookie year, and then maybe eventually build into that inside linebacker that they're looking for. On the outside, though, keep an eye on Keon Adams. He was a 7th-round draft pick in 2017 from Western Michigan.
Okay.
He was put on injured reserve with a shoulder injury last year in training camp. They liked him enough to keep him. Now, a 7th-round draft pick, you typically, if you get hurt, you're not a guarantee to stay in the organization. They could just let you go. But they liked what they saw enough to keep him, and they didn't get an outside linebacker from free agency, and they didn't target one in the draft. To me, that says that they like what they see from him. So keep an eye on him. He and Anthony Shaquille are the main backups on the outside. Not outstanding depth. There's a lot of question marks there, but just someone to keep an eye on.
All right, good one. Keon Adams, Matthew Thomas. We'll definitely keep an eye on those guys. Let's move over to the final position group, and that is the secondary. Joe Hayden was brought in, the veteran. You got Burns, you got Hilton at nickel. So that looks set. And Morgan Burnett was signed to replace Mitchell at safety. You got Davis. Edmonds might play a little bit back there as well. The draft Marcus Allen, a kid that could have been drafted as high as 2nd or 3rd in the draft, so maybe that was a bargain. And you got some other talented players that were drafted last year, like Sutton, Allen, and then some veterans, including Sensabaugh. So tell me about the unit. It looks like it has some promise. So what's the good, what's the bad?
Well, there's a lot of potential in the secondary. I've been telling that to a lot of people this offseason. The good is that for once it looks like they actually have depth.
Yeah.
You think about the fact that if Artie Burns continues to improve, and although he does make some boneheaded mistakes, he has improved each year. And so if he continues that progression, that would be a good thing. Joe Hayden, I think if he stays healthy, is a tremendous cornerback still, even at his age. And Mike Hilton, he plays like he's shot out of a cannon. He's the perfect slot cornerback that you want in the National Football League. And then even after him, you have Cameron Sutton, who can play outside. If Artie Burns has a regression, they have someone that can step in that can play outside. And if not, he's going to take William Gay's dime defensive back role. And so their cornerbacks, I like them. And they still have Brian Allen, who is another 2017 draft pick.
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot of experience playing defense. He only played 2 years in college, so it's only his 4th year playing defense. But he's big, tall, he's long, and he can run. and they like those attributes. So if he might stick around, even if he's just a special teams guy, it could be more depth in the future for him. Safety, talk about an overhaul. I mean, you get rid of Robert Golden, you get rid of Mike Mitchell. That left only Sean Davis as the only player that had actual game experience at the safety position. And so I love the pickup of Morgan Burnett. He's a great tackler. That's something they needed at the safety position. He can play the box. They're still not sure who's going to play what spot in terms of free safety and strong safety, but I think safeties are going to kind of be all interchangeable. Talked about Terrell Edmonds playing more inside linebacker. I think Burnett could do that as well. I do see Davis playing free safety. I think he has more range. He's a longer athlete. But then, Marcus Allen. I think he could be a really good special teams guy his rookie year. And maybe if he develops, could be that he's a thumper. He loves to hit. You watch his film, he's not going to shy away from contact. So they definitely added some depth. It's unproven depth right now, unfortunately, but they do have some depth there. The secondary, if I were to say, are they trending up or down, I would say they're trending up.
Is Davis, has he been, as far as the younger guys, has he been a little bit more of the disappointment at this time? He still has some room to develop, right?
He still has plenty of room to develop. For me, I guess people are saying it wasn't a letdown because I didn't have huge expectations for him. I didn't even expect him to start as a rookie, but he saw a lot of time. I just don't think that Davis was ever in the proper position, and this comes down to communication. It comes down to Mike Mitchell. I think if you put Morgan Burnett back there, who everyone I've talked to that covers the Packers, everything I've read, everything I've watched on him, is that he's a super communicator and he's unbelievably reliable on the field, and that's what they need in their secondary. So Sean Davis playing alongside someone like Burnett rather than Mike Mitchell, and that's not. I don't want to degrade Mitchell, but he was always hurt, and he did make a lot of mistakes. And when you make a mistake in the deep secondary, you're letting someone else out. You're hanging someone else out to dry. So if you can just shore up the communication, you're on your spots where you're supposed to be. I think Davis can be fine, and I do think he fits free safety role better than a strong safety, just because I think he has more speed and he has more range. Get him deep, let him play his angles. I think he'll be fine.
Okay. And as far as the special teams unit, of course, Chris Boswell had a career year, incredible game winners. If he can do anything like that this year, Steelers would be ecstatic. But everything else didn't really translate very well. Maybe that's why a lot of the players they picked up in the draft have special teams ability, like you mentioned, Marcus Allen. There's a few others there as well. What about the punting situation and who should be taking over as the kick returners here with the players that were the number one guys are gone? I'm a little bit surprised that the Steelers didn't bring in someone else to compete with Jordan Berry, or have they? I mean, he didn't look like he had a very good year last year.
No, he did not. I was very disappointed in Berry personally. I thought that he is capable of a lot more. They're giving him another shot this year to see if he can improve. They did bring in another camp leg. It was, I don't even know the player's name, but I do know they have another punter on the roster. I typically don't learn punters' names until they make the team.
Yeah, right.
So, but we'll see. That's people don't want to. A lot of fans don't think a punter is important, but when it comes to flipping the field, just look what Sam Koch does for the Ravens. I mean, he's just a tremendous punter, and you think you have a team pinned back and they punt the ball 50 yards, and you're starting at your own 30 instead of maybe at midfield. It's a big difference. So the Steelers' punting situation definitely needs to improve. Can't ask for more from Chris Boswell. He improved last year not only on his accuracy and his overall points, but also on his range. He was hitting 50-yarders, something that he struggled with before. Mike Tomlin trusted him more with those long-range kicks, so that'll be a good thing for them. The question for me as special teams is, will the Steelers keep a roster spot for a return man?
Yep.
Because, with Antonio Brown, we know that how dynamic he is returning punts, but you don't want as the NFL Network says, the number 2 player in the NFL, returning punts, putting themselves out there to risk injury. And to be honest with you, Antonio Brown, in the last 2 seasons, when he's been out there to return punts, has looked very disinterested. He'll let the ball bounce instead of fair catching it, or he'll fair catch everything. Very rarely did you see a return. probably because he doesn't want to risk himself getting hurt.
That's
I
right.
get that.
Yeah.
So at what point do the Steelers say, hey, it's worth us keeping a guy? I think they have a guy on the roster in Quadri Henderson from Pitt, who was a very good return man in college, could also double as a slot receiver if necessary. He's not going to be someone that's going to see a lot of time. But I just don't know if they have a roster spot for a strict return man. Mike Tomlin does not like to use defensive players to handle return duties for some reason. I don't know why. But Cameron Sutton returned kicks, punts, and kickoffs for Tennessee when he was there. And for some reason, Tomlin just does not like that. That's why last year Juju Smith-Schuster was returning kickoffs, even though Smith-Schuster had never done it at USC that I'm aware of. And it just is really odd. They just have not done their diligence in finding replacements. So you have a guy that's on your roster that could do it with Henderson from Pitt, the undrafted free agent rookie.
Yeah.
I'm just not sure the numbers are going to work out, because that's what this comes down to with the 53-man roster is
Sure.
the numbers. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, and of course we talked about 4 quarterbacks, or you're having maybe 2 fullbacks, even though we know Samuels could play everywhere. So yeah, those are the little roster spots that you got to account for, and it is very hard to keep a kick returner that doesn't do anything else but return kicks. It is, especially today's roster limitations. And by the way, Robert Golden also being gone, that's something that will hurt the team on special teams. So we'll find out how much. Okay, 14 straight years of 500 or better football, and the last time the Steelers played sub-500 football was 2003 when they were 6-10. That run has included 10 playoffs, 2 Super Bowl wins, and 3 Super Bowl appearances. So. This is when you compare. I don't know how much you remember the Bradshaw days, or at least you've chronicled the Bradshaw days. But speaking to say the old timers that were young during those days and know what's going on now, what do you think is a better run?
Well, that's tough. The game has changed so much. I wasn't alive for those days. I've watched a lot of footage. My father tells me all about it every chance he gets. But the game is just it's whenever you try to compare the two, the run they're having now compared to the run in the 70s. I definitely think that the 70s teams were probably more complete from start to finish. But the game was so different.
Sure.
The offense is run. Franco Harris got so many carries, and then they had 2 back-to-back with Rocky Blyer versus those years. And I remember watching, it was actually recently a Football Life on Lynn Swann and John Stallworth.
Yeah.
And Stallworth was back in the tunnel, and Antonio Brown had just come off the field, and he congratulated him. And they said, hey, did you see how many targets he got that game? He said, what do you mean? He said, he got targeted 16 times in that game. He said, 16 times? That's like 6 weeks when I played. But it's the truth.
Sure.
When he was playing, he was vying for passes from Bradshaw with Swan and all the other weapons that they had. And so, he would never see 16 targets in a game. And here's Antonio Brown, though, he's getting all these receptions and yards, and he's setting new standards at the NFL level for the last 5 years. It's just so different, and it's tough to compare.
Yeah.
Both are tremendous. And it all equates to the Steelers fan base being the most spoiled fan base in the National Football League.
Uh-huh.
And I love covering them because it's Super Bowl or bust.
Uh-huh.
It can also be extremely frustrating, though. So it'll be a fun season to watch in Pittsburgh, that's for sure.
And I'm not so sure Terry Bradshaw would have made it nowadays, because it took him 5 or 6 years of hell before he mounted. It's like Phil Simms, the two, and of course the two of them never would have made it in today's NFL, because they would have already been off the Giants in Pittsburgh after year 2 or 3. Teams would have given up on them, not thrown them out there for 5 or 6 straight years until they finally started to produce. So yeah, it's a very different time. And I think the one thing that impresses me about this run from Pittsburgh is they've done it through free agency, turnover, coaching turnover, all of that. Whereas back in the old days, Chuck Noll through the draft, same guys. So definitely different.
if you want to do something fun, because Terry Bradshaw was a tremendous big game quarterback, 4-0 in Super Bowls, cannot take that away from him. The only other quarterback that has a perfect record in that many is Joe Montana.
Mm-hmm.
But Joe Montana was so much a better passer than Terry Bradshaw. Go back and look at statistics.
Yeah, statistics, okay? I know.
And if you just look at Terry Bradshaw's stats and take away 4 Super Bowl wins, there's no he's even sniffing the Hall of Fame because his numbers are awful.
Yes, it's like Joe Namath. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I recently wrote an article about how Roethlisberger, his stats, I mean, his Steelers passing records might not ever be beaten. I mean, Mason Rudolph maybe because he can throw the football, but I looked at the Steelers quarterbacks of past, and the fact that Bubby Brister made the top 5 is all you need to know about the Steelers passing records.
That is funny. I didn't know that. But like you said, spoiled fan base. They've had a lot of winning, and maybe they've done it right again with Mason Rudolph, James Washington, etc. So when the time comes. But Big Ben's still around, Le'Veon Bell's still around, Antonio Brown, Mike Tomlin, and they're going to go for it again. And maybe this is the year because there does seem to be a chink potentially in the armor of the New England Patriots since the Super Bowl. And if that's the case, then maybe there'll be an opening this time around. So Pittsburgh plays New England again this year. They seem to play every year.
Week 15, same as last year.
Week 15. All right. Very nice. Jeff, I appreciate it. Great job as always. BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. And we look forward to talking to you again during the season.
All right. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Jeff. All right. Jeff Hartman, we've had him on for a couple of years right now, I think about. He's been a guest of ours probably almost a handful of times. We're getting there. So Jeff does a great job, and it's good to have him on once again talking Pittsburgh Steelers football. So we'll be back again next week, starting on Monday, with more training camp coverage on the OFN. As we talk Chicago Bears and Detroit Lions football, we get into NFC North. We've already talked about the Packers, so Bears and Lions on Monday. Don't forget to order a subscription of your choosing, including the 2018 Ourlads NFL Draft Review Guide. It's out right now. It's available at ourlads.com. You can follow us on Twitter at PrimeSN. That's where you get our media alerts, including for every show that's available, like this one, and when it's available, of course. Thanks for listening to this edition of the OFN Meeting Room with Greg DePalma on the Ourlads Football Radio Network, where it's never too early to think about the start of the 2018 football season.